Welcome to this session on attracting, hiring, and retaining veterans. I'm Max Dubroff. I'm a veteran. I served in the Air Force for more than 20 years. I'm a hiring manager with experience in different organizations, and I'm also your colleague, an HR professional. And I have this opportunity to guide you through this session, which will achieve 3 important objectives. And these objectives will help you understand, first of all, why it's important to hire veterans. Second of all, understand some of the barriers that exist and the tools that you can use to successfully attract, hire, and retain veterans. And third, I want to think more broadly. I want to enable consultants, coaches, and mentors to be able to more effectively support both employers and veterans to get the best mutual results. Through this session, I'll make reference to some resources. Those will be available at the end of the session so that you can dig in further. I've conducted several interviews, and there's a bunch of people that want to share their thoughts about both why it's helpful to hire veterans and how you can do it even more effectively. I'm also going through this with the presumption that you can pause and rewind to see resources or the names of the people that I'm interviewing. Through this presentation, I will share 3 different personas to help you understand the vast opportunity we have. First of all, as the title says, military veterans. These are the people who have served in the U.S. military and since separated or retired. I also want to include 2 other groups who are closely related to veterans. First, those who are currently serving in the Guard or the Reserve. Second, the spouses of our veterans, the Guard, or the Reserve. So each time I say veterans, please think of all 3 of these groups. Those who are military veterans, the Guard and Reserve, and the spouses of those who have served or are serving. There are several audiences I'm reaching out to through this session. On the top of the list, hiring managers and HR professionals. Most people already understand the value of veterans. They just want more tools and approaches to do it more effectively as they attract, hire, and retain veterans. But we need to also keep in mind that a lot of veterans see us, the hiring managers and the HR professionals, as a barrier. So this is something that we can really hone our skills on. In addition, I'm reaching out to veterans who want to help other veterans. I've provided some great resources through this session, which can help you be even more effective as you help your fellow veteran. I'm reaching out to consultants because a lot of times you're partnered with an organization and you have the opportunity to help them see the opportunities in focusing on hiring more veterans. I'm also reaching out to everybody who has a passion for helping veterans. As a mentor or a coach, you can have a great impact on each veteran. And to paint the picture more clearly, look at these quotes that I got from a SHRM resource that illustrate what's happening between organizations and veterans. The most important thing to realize is that none of these are limited just to veterans. All 7 of these exist with non-veterans as well. But the key factor is that there's a sharper focus that employers have sometimes on veterans for these reasons. So let's address each of these inaccurate preconceived notions about veterans so you are better able to succeed and not get stuck behind them. First, we recognize that most people are not that good at resume writing. The particular challenge that veterans have is they've been steeped in a certain language that is not the same as what you use on a daily basis. So just like any other language barrier, it behooves us to make sure we understand the capabilities that person brings. Second, as you'll hear in a couple moments, military people have lots of technical experience. The key is, do they know how to communicate the experience they have in the language that you understand? It goes back to that first bullet about the resume writing. Third, even though many veterans do have certifications and credentials, even those who don't likely have experience that you would value even more if you knew how to look for it instead of looking for a specific credential that you're used to looking for. The fourth one is actually ridiculous. Because if you look around, you're already experiencing lots of turnover from non-veterans. The first thing to keep in mind is that when you show the loyalty to hire a veteran, you will get far more loyalty in return than you would from the average population. Second, think of how proud you'll be at the bar when you tell your friends that you chose not to hire a veteran because they might leave to serve their nation at some point in the future. The fifth one has three problems. First of all, you do want somebody that will follow your instructions and do business as you expect in your organization. Second, veterans are far ahead of their civilian counterparts in learning about leadership and implementing it on a daily basis. Third, there's an implied notion here that veterans are not creative, when actually veterans need to adapt and lead in very unpredictable situations. Sixth, while niche job sites or placement firms can be helpful, you don't need to do that. The best effect will come by the way that you write the job ads. By focusing on skills and specifically welcoming veterans, you will attract the attention of the veterans that you want to meet. Finally, the seventh one has three major problems. First of all, it ignores that the great majority of people who have mental health challenges are not veterans. Second of all, the great majority of veterans do not have PTSD. Third, those veterans who do have PTSD are far more likely to be getting support and treatment than those with non-military related PTSD. The good news is I'll be able to address these inaccurate preconceived notions through this presentation. But it's even more important that you're aware of them so that you can address them yourself.
Yeah, so as a former both Air National Guard and Air Force Reserve member, I have worked for different employers, and I have worked for employers who were super supportive and those who weren't so supportive, and maybe that lack of support showed up in more subtle ways. And I will share that the way that I felt towards that employer was significantly different based on that support I received. So the employer who was supportive of my military service, when I was at work, I went above and beyond, and it really made me form a deeper connection and loyalty to that employer. So it really is meaningful, not just when we support, but how authentically we support our Guard and Reserve members.
A common perspective I've heard from many veterans is that the opportunities for them are the best immediately around a major U.S. military installation. This perspective also matters greatly in the converse, because many of our Guard and Reserve members live away from military installations. Their employers might not be as familiar with the military culture and capabilities, so the support of these employers is even more crucial for these patriots who are both serving their nation and the community while also bringing their capabilities for your organization. So a common thing that we can start with is why we should want to attract, hire, and retain veterans. There's numerous reasons. Just a few of them are on the screen. So let's dig into a couple of these so you can understand some details. One of the examples of resistance that we explored a few moments ago is a belief that there's a lack of technical experience or that certifications or credentials are absent from veterans. Actually, one thing to understand is that in the military, there are more than 7,000 kinds of jobs across more than 100 functional areas. Also, veterans are very adaptive and apply strong critical thinking. They learn these in very stressful situations. So in one way, they may come across as intense because of their strong focus on making sure they understand the problem and ensuring success. And it comes from a culture of wearing many hats and stepping up even when things are not clear.
Critical thinking and actually trying to get someone to look at the strategic big picture and to see the forest for the trees and to see the second and third order effects of whatever path that you're trying to take, that the military can do. That your veterans are exceptional at. When you throw something at them, they can say, whoa, time out here. Have you thought about if we do this 2 months down the road, this is something that could come out of that you're not quite thinking of, but it's a possibility. So let's make sure we plan for that as well. And the ability to plan for the unknown And to have a path that can fork in multiple different directions is something that your veterans are going to be able to do and not even think twice about.
Veterans are also well known for their experience in leadership and building teams.
A veteran comes to the workforce wanting to create that team, wanting to build a team. If they're a veteran and you hire them into a managerial role, you can absolutely expect that from this veteran. They want, fostering camaraderie, where folks can all come in and feel like they're all contributing to a mission, to success. That is the beauty of what you get from a veteran, because they come in and they can personalize this mission so that it means something very specific to the folks that they're leading, or even if you're the contributor, the staff member yourself, you then have that ability of saying, hey, this is how I fit into this picture. This is what I can contribute. So teaming is huge, right? What you get out of a veteran when they come in, they're hungry for having that community. They're hungry to not let somebody down. They don't want to let you down. And I'll use a term, is not a one-trick pony, okay? They're not going to come in and say, hey, you know what, this is all I can do for you. No, these individuals are coming with so many vast experiences, from leading people to leading, initiatives and missions, to managing budgets. In the Department of Defense, we learn how to manage budgets really, really well, because you do the most with the very least at times, okay? So you learn all of these things, and it's truly, you're learning as you're going. So you're getting these individuals, these veterans that have, various experiences.
Also, veterans are very responsive to the needs of their boss and the organization because of their strong desire to win.
Like all hiring managers, we have our own journey with who to hire and what we like. I found that as a personal preference and what drives me, I have this very strong desire to win and solve problems. And so that kind of pushes me to look for that in people in certain ways. Not everyone has to be that, but I do look for that. And what I found is that veterans, essentially through their experience and training, have this amazing ability to creatively solve problems, work with others, and they never give up. And so I think it's something that you don't see on a piece of paper, right, as you're reviewing resumes. And so if you're looking for that on your team, it is a great place to start and look deeper beyond just the piece of paper at what value that personality brings. And through my time here, I have about 4 veterans that work for me, and I recently hosted a skill bridge, and they just bring a completely different element of teamwork and willingness to help than other people that you almost cannot train. You can't train it at a corporate level. And so as you're looking to build a team, I would really encourage you to consider veterans, because they have that, they've been trained in that way, and it's ingrained in them.
Another helpful insight comes from the study that demonstrates that most employers really see the benefit in hiring veterans. Now keep in mind, not every veteran is the same. You will still need to have a great process, and that's what we're about to dive into. The process of attracting, hiring, and retaining veterans. One very important perspective is to understand the culture that veterans are coming from. While one may think that veterans are very capable at looking for jobs, actually that skill was not developed for most veterans, especially not the successful ones, while in the military.
When you have a military veteran that's been in for years, and in fact, they are have a complete contrary culture to what is going on out in the civilian world. We are specifically told to not go look for jobs, that the system, a friend, a leader will call you up and say, hey, Shan, we've got a new job for you, and you're going to be great, and you're going to love it. And I will. I will both be great, and I will love it. There's going to be a mission. There's going to be people to lead, and I'm going to go there, and I'm going to figure out whatever it is, and we're going to make it happen. So when you get out of the military, your culture is completely contrary, and that doesn't make it right. I'm just saying it's just different than what goes on in the civilian world. I would suspect, as Max would ask you to go out and do a better job at hiring veterans, you're you're hoping that veterans would find you and would be looking for a job. And if they wanted the job, they'd let you know. But that's not our culture. In fact, the jobs I did, I had a gentleman I knew previously called me up when I was still in the Air Force and said, Shan, I have a company. It's very successful. It's a startup. Would you consider retiring and helping me run my company? I'll do anything. And the more you understand that military people are trained, sometimes you'll look at a military person and say, what do they know about semi-truck dealership sales and the manufacturing and design of a semi-truck trailer? I'll tell you, it doesn't matter. The military people are taught to come in, and unless it's a turnaround situation that needs immediate action, to take the time to figure out what's going on here, to research, to study, to collaborate with other people, and to figure out and become the best leader you've ever met. They will figure it out. They go into situations that are unexpected, uncertain, beyond anything that they've ever seen, and they are trained to figure it out and make it happen. So, but again, it's just a different dynamic where our entire culture is, we don't look for jobs. Jobs look for us. And again, and all you have to do is say, Shan, it's a great job. You're going to be great at it, and you're going to love it. And I will. And I think that that's true for a great majority of military people. I think you could be a lot more successful if you would take a more active role, because again, that's all their training through their life has been, that it is not, in fact, it'd be seen as inappropriate for them to be actively searching for a job. So you would be heavily benefited in the long term, I would assert, by hiring them, but it just takes a different culture and to understand their way of thinking, and they will convert to your way of thinking over time. It won't take long, but just as that transition from military to civilian, we're both two standing far apart. Someone's got to cross that divide. Everything in their life just changed. Their whole culture, so I guess I would ask you to be the one to step across that divide and hold your hand out and see what happens.
In order to effectively attract veterans, it's helpful to have a strong program. SkillBridge is a fantastic program that allows somebody who's separating from the military soon to spend some time working with an employer.
We've done quite a bit, from the beginning of my time with what we call the talent acquisition team here at Sandia, to leverage, various recruiting strategies to attract the veteran type of talent that we would want here in Sandia, to also, creating meaningful programs within the organization that then provide advocacy or provide, a resource group of sorts, to these veterans, so that as they're acclimating to the business culture of the company, they also have community here that they can lean into in those moments, or those points where they have, maybe possible challenges that maybe only another veteran can relate to. We've been successful, the past few years. I now am responsible, for not only supporting the hiring of veterans, but also members with disabilities. We also focus on various areas, throughout the community as well. Whether, it's a diverse group or minority groups, we, do our best to seek out the very best and top talent in these areas. But just more specific to the veteran piece, right, and the work that we've done here, or that we've been a part of, lots of lessons learned. There wasn't a framework, or there wasn't a blueprint for us to follow. So I'm very, grateful in sharing that we had a lot of great executive leaders, from our labs director to, various associate lab directors, and all the way, to our level one managers that supported the ideas of, how do we bring this great talent of veterans? How do we bring in this great veteran talent into Sandia? So it initially started, with discussions with our executives, with discussions with prominent leaders in various mission spaces throughout Sandia, some that were actually veterans themselves, right? So they understood that there was a huge need for that just the same. And when we did that, we started developing ideas. So one of the greater ideas was creating a recruiting strategy, a corporate recruiting strategy that was very intentional on seeking and looking for veteran talent, not only within the state of New Mexico, but as a national lab, we want a national presence. So we created a strategy that supported the recruitment not only at local, but regional and national events as well. They've created a system or a process where the service member can leave the service while still remaining active duty the last 6 months of their time in service, or the last 6 months prior to them retiring from active duty, service. So once they hit that mark, they're able to then join a SkillBridge approved company during those last 6 months, so they get a full effect of what it's like to actually work with that company.
Even with the strongest program, you may find it hard to match with the skills that they had while they were in the military. It's a great opportunity to bring them in and teach them new skills while you're benefiting as a company.
If the company has a need that maybe isn't quite exactly aligned with a military role to a civilian role, there's an opportunity, one, for a company to be able to integrate a very great professional to a future culture of the company, to get familiar with a particular department, group, division, that there may be alignment for them to continue on their career with taking the skills, but maybe something completely different.
So you might be thinking, how difficult is it to create a SkillBridge program?
Well, it was a challenging process. However, it ended up not being as challenging as I thought. The organization that I work for required us to involve legal program management and project management to ensure that obviously there was compliance and there was alignment between the organization and the Department of Defense memorandum of understanding process that must be signed. It did seem a little daunting at first because the information didn't seem very forthcoming, but once you kind of get into the process and provide the Department of Defense the information regarding the company and being able to work through any legal or processes of your own individual company, it actually is a very smooth process. The MOU is very easy. It basically aligns that you understand that the individual is not an employee of your company, but is still continuing to be an employee of the federal government. So from that point forward, it moved very smoothly.
Another option is to partner with an organization that already has a strong program, because they're looking for places where their SkillBridge participants can get work done for you.
HKPO Veterans Academy, we're a nonprofit branch of HKPO where we specialize in offering a SkillBridge opportunity for transitioning veterans. Through that SkillBridge opportunity, it offers a great deal of upskilling for the veterans that are in that transition space, upskilling specifically in process improvement exercises or disciplines such as Lean Six, Project Management, Scrum Master, and a few others. And it gives the transitioning veterans great exposure to industry and industry trends and certifications, as well as some networking to try and help bridge the gap and help aid in their transition.
So to get their certification, they need to do, I think, 2 projects through that process. So they need a place to actually go in and perform a continuous improvement project. So by having partners that we can go back to say, hey, we have this service member. They're not going to cost you anything, but they'd love to come in, work on a process, save you some money, make things more efficient, and make it easier for your employees. They get that real-world experience, they get their certification, and then hopefully they're a great fit for your company and maybe they go work there. But even if not, they've got a great resume bullet point.
Another thing to keep in mind is that as you want to attract veterans, it's actually the same principles you have of building relationships and pipelines.
There is plenty of interest, especially because there is such a large military footprint in the state of New Mexico that I think allows employers access to so many veterans and military personnel who would potentially want to stay in the local area and continue on their professional or civilian careers. So I completely believe that it's just another additional pipeline or outlet for employers in the metropolitan area and the state of New Mexico.
Whether you build your own program or partner with someone else, these are the actions that help build relationships and pipelines for talent. Focusing more specifically on Guard and Reserve, there's a great organization that can help you strengthen your ability to attract, hire, and retain veterans.
An organization that helps support our Guard and Reserve members as it relates to their civilian employment is the Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, or ESGR, which is a DoD office made up primarily of volunteers who exist in every state and territory. They have a threefold mission. One is to educate both Guard and Reserve members and employers and potential employers about the rights and responsibilities as it relates to military membership and their employment. They have a recognition program recognizing those employers who are truly supporting their Guard and Reserve members in their workforce. And they have a mediation service, which is a free of charge service that helps both Guard and Reserve members and employers work through difficult or tricky situations as it relates to that relationship. So we present an award in front of your workforce and share how much of a patriot you are in helping to support that Guard or Reserve member with a patriotism award signed by the Secretary of Defense, a lapel pin that says ESGR Patriot. We will also give you an opportunity, if you would like to sign a statement of support, which will allow you to post that statement of support in some public area. So if customers or other employees can see that you have made a commitment to support the Guard and Reserve members of your workforce. That has a compounding effect in the organization because customers or employees see that, and employees, for example, will see that you are really taking care of, and you have a high importance for our Guard and Reserve members, and that has a positive impact in engagement, positive impact in retention. And if you post it someplace where your customers can see it, that could have a positive impact on your relationship and on potentially on your revenue for your organization, just demonstrating that this is something that's important to you.
And this recognition really works, because veterans typically look on military-related sites for jobs, so having that recognition can really strengthen your brand. Spouses can also experience challenges, so it's important to understand how important it is to consider them for their talent as well.
I think what many people don't realize is that over 50% of our nation's national defense is provided by members of the Guard and Reserve. And our members of our Guard and Reserve can only accomplish their mission when they have what we call a three-legged support. That's support of their mission organization itself, the support of their families, and the support of their employer. The support that we provide as employers are essential to our national defense. As we talked about the three-legged stool, one of those legs was the family member to support that Guard and Reserve members, and that family member themselves many times has an employer, and just recognizing as an employer of that spouse that there may be some challenging times that spouse is going through while their Guard and Reserve member is deployed is very helpful in them to be able to provide support then to that Guard and Reserve members. In my experience, practically every employer wants to do the right thing as it relates to our Guard and Reserve members and their military service. So that right thing can be confusing or complex. And that's why there's an entity like the Employer Support of the Guard and Reserve, whose job is not to enforce. The job is to educate, to reward, and to mediate, and to help both Guard and Reserve members and employers. So I just encourage everybody to utilize that resource.
In order to successfully attract, hire, and retain veterans, it's going to take more than one action, so you really need executive support. It's the leadership intentionality and commitment to action that will help strengthen the brand and attract veterans. Most veterans are not just looking for a job or a career. They want to know that they will be serving a purpose, that this will be part of a calling for them. Their sense of service can be very important to your organization.
That tie to something that's greater is something that seems to attract a lot of military talent. So if you can find something that's not just business as usual or some kind of a rote business rhythm that they can see as a higher purpose or see as something that's helping the greater good and have that mission tie, that can help really attract the veterans because they're used to that. So one of the things that we found with veterans is that need to connect with a higher purpose. And when they leave the military and they go find a job somewhere else, when they're working at, say, a local grocery store or going to one of the electric companies or something like that. They don't have that feel of connecting to a higher purpose that they did in the military, and it leads to them not lasting that long in those type of positions. They look for something else. They look for a job where they can feel that purpose. They can feel that connection to the greater good. So if you can find within your organization a mission that connects to a greater purpose, that does something more than just earning a paycheck, you can really attract and then retain those veterans, and you can capitalize upon those skills that they've obtained with years and years of military training, because some of those skills might not look like they're an easy transfer over, but the very ability to adapt to change continuously is one of the things that makes veterans really good to have on your team, because one thing that is constant, that's change.
Veterans bring, this sense of service, whether you're tied to national security or not. If you're, private organization or company, if the service member comes in and if they align their professional and personal values with that of the company, that's a huge win. But first, they need to understand too, like, hey, this is what our company works off of. This is how the basis of our values, our core system, our core values within our organization. If they find alignment with that, it's a huge win. So understanding the culture immediately is what these service members, veterans are also looking for. They're looking for that need of belonging. They want to join organizations. They want to be a part of teams that they feel like they're part of, something bigger than themselves. That's what these veterans are looking for. So as an employer, that's great, because you're looking at somebody that wants to be a part of your team, and isn't there just, for a short stint, but if they believe in that system, if they believe in your core values and what your mission stands for, you potentially have them there for a career.
In addition to the strong sense of service and the need for purpose, it will be important for you to attract them by listing out the skills needed, not just qualifications. They will be better able to identify themselves in your words if you're focused on what you need them to do.
My husband, who went through the program, a lot of times when it comes to transitioning service members, especially those that are kind of in those senior roles, they can say on their resume, yeah, I've got all this project management experience. I want to be project manager. But employers kind of look at their resume and go, okay, well, here's the nitty gritty. Where's something that's going to add value and a little bit more weight and teeth to your experience? And that's kind of where these credentials are coming into play. So he went through the academy, he got his black belt, and then he also got his PMP. And both have been invaluable to him since he has transitioned. Prior to his transition, he went on tons and tons of different interviews, and he kind of sold himself, if you will, but nobody was biting because at the time he did not have a credential that held the weight, and that was back in his experience, which would be that PMP. So because of HKPO, he had the opportunity to get this or these credentials that now add weight and substance to his experience that he gained throughout the military. And I think a lot of times that's where kind of employers fall short when they're kind of reading somebody's resume, because these service members and these military professionals have a wealth of knowledge and experience. Sometimes they're limited by what they know within their field.
The good news is there are a lot of people who are helping veterans with their resumes in order to communicate their skills. I'd like to encourage you, any of you, to join in, because you don't have to know where they're coming from. What you need to realize is your strength as a hiring manager or an HR professional can help them get to where they want to be.
They need to hear over and over and over again that they have their whole lives weighed out, and it's not just about chasing the paycheck. It's chasing what makes you feel good here and what provides work-life balance for your family. I put the work back on them. A lot of veterans will throw a resume at me and say, where do you think I fit? And I'm like, it doesn't matter where I think you fit. What resonates with you? What makes your heart sing? I'm not going to determine the course of the rest of your life. You have to do some soul searching for that. So that if I have somebody whose resume I can't read, I'll shoot it out to the leadership team and the VERG and say, I'm not quite understanding this. Do one of you have the bandwidth right now to mentor this person? They really, really, really want to work at the lab, and I'm not sure if I'm giving them the best guidance. What are your insights? And generally, veterans love nothing more than to help fellow veterans. So they'll go, yes, I'll take them, I've got a light week this week. I'll respond. I'll take it up. So I've really been trying to build up a veterans village within the lab, which again assists the hiring managers, because we have members of our veteran employee resource group that will sit in on an interview panel for and kind of be the translator. How would you tell your mom what you did on your last deployment without being classified, right? How would you tell your family members? And I need nuts and bolts. I don't need, when a veteran puts their, even a 5-year career, their obligated time in the military, into 2 bullet points, I'm like, that's doing yourself a disservice. You're taught leadership from the get-go. How would you explain if you maintain tanks, what are you responsible for? Do you have a quality control background? Is there a checklist that you're following? In the course of your military, your 5 years in the military, were you then assigned as a role as a mentor of subordinates? I'm like, those are the details. I don't need to know that you were at STRATCOM, blah, 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 blah. I need simple verbiage telling me and showing me what you did, because that's the only way I can sell you to a hiring manager. I had one guy rewrite verbatim from goarmy.com what the role of an infantry officer was. And I'm like, that's just a bunch of words strung together. What did that mean to you? What did you do? What were you responsible for? What was your aha moment in the military where you really rose to the occasion?
Similar to any applicant, we want the process to be very easy. With veterans, if you can make the process easier for them to identify the skills that they bring, you will find even greater success.
For veterans only, click this button, answer this question about, what problem have you solved and how and why. Just something to break out of the monotony of resumes that you may receive from other candidates. I don't know. My brain is just pulsating with ideas of how to do that, because I understand as hiring manager, you get a lot of resumes. So it's going to be quite difficult because you can't have a conversation with every veteran's resume that you read. So what process can be created to identify these awesome, individuals to get them in these positions?
So now that you're doing a better job of attracting veterans, let's talk about hiring them. To put it in perspective, even veterans who have faced very hostile environments find the interview process to be very daunting.
So if you have a veteran that can look at resumes when you're hiring, that helps, because they can say, well, this is what it really means, because a lot of times veterans are not real good at figuring out how to make their resume civilianized.
Veterans hire veterans because they know the experience they bring. But if I've got an HR person, if I'm going in for an interview and that HR person doesn't understand where I've been in terms of my service to my country, are they really hiring the most qualified person? If an HR person is looking at a non-veteran applying for the same job as a veteran, and because this other person has his degree and has some experience but not the same level as my veteran, are you hiring the best person now?
Veterans basically speak a different language also, right? It's kind of a foreign language, and the different branches kind of have their own dialect of that same foreign language. Sometimes they're even foreign amongst themselves. Veterans have been ingrained for 4, 10, 20, 30 years of speaking that language. It's very hard to be able to break out of that and come back to either corporate or English as their now a second language, to be able to articulate those professional accomplishments on a resume, to be able to articulate those accomplishments in an interview. And so from an HR manager, hiring manager, HR professional hiring manager that's interested or potentially pursuing these candidates, if there's something that comes across that is confusing, you don't understand the acronyms, the vernacular that's being used is confusing, pause, interrupt the conversation, and ask the question. Because what that veteran will then be able to do and pivot, oh, you don't understand that. Well, let me explain. It was kind of like this. And they can jump into that story to be able to elevate that and kind of clear up the confusion that is often lost in translation just from that different language. And so hiring managers often that don't have military experience, or even and having served as a hiring manager myself, speaking or reading a resume from a veteran of a different branch, I don't always understand those acronyms. So I'll slow it down, ask them what that is, what that entails. They can break it down from structure, approach, procedures, whatever it may be. And then I'm able to then understand what that is and have a clear understanding of their impact and their capability and their future contributions to the organization.
They have to interview questions in a way to glean the answers that they're seeking from the candidate. And the other thing I've coached managers with, a lot of these military members, and I'm talking about military members that have been military their whole careers. They've never had the civilian job experience. They've never interviewed for a job. You don't sit down with the admiral of the group and interview for your next role before you get assigned it. You're just told this is what you're doing. So they get the veterans get so nervous at the in-person interviews because they don't know what to expect and anticipate that sometimes they get all tongue twisty or they're not articulating well. And the interviewing panel needs to have a little bit of patience or ask a leading question, tell me a situation that was a high risk situation at stakes and how did you resolve that? What was your methodology? You kind of have to coach them a little bit in the interview.
It's interesting that veterans generally know what their strengths are, and they believe that you as employers are looking for exactly what they bring. And they're right. A SHRM study shows that exactly what you're looking for in college graduates exists as a strength in veterans. Generally, veterans have been so focused on mastering their environment inside the military that they don't really understand anything beyond the large, well-known government-related companies just outside the gate. So they may be unaware of opportunities in small and medium-sized companies where actually those companies would gain more from their experience and also their ability to adapt and wear multiple hats. One interesting dilemma that exists with a lot of veterans is they come with an attitude of, I can do anything. And they actually believe that will appeal to you because they know that once they're in your organization and you have changing needs and pop-up things that need to be resolved, they're the kind of people that will succeed and make greatness happen for you. But the problem is the selection process often overlooks people who are not specific to what they're going to bring to you. So one thing that coaches and employers can do is make sure, first of all, that veterans understand that they need to research the organization and understand what they're looking for in this hiring process. And employers can assess the long-term benefit of their skills and their willingness to step up and do anything. One interesting aspect of objective criteria in the hiring process is that actually it's not all objective. For instance, the number of years of experience in any area is not always going to be the same. Think about a veteran. Their experience is often more valuable because it was learned and applied in very stressful situations. Additionally, they have many leadership roles and opportunities to guide and elevate others in performance of the mission. A lot of employers believe that a specialized degree or a certain school is the way to assure quality. Well, actually, we know that not all graduates of a school or a specific program are the same. There's variance there. So instead of focusing on a specialized degree or a certain school, keep in mind that education in general shows a capacity for learning. And that's what you're looking for from your new employee, that they can learn very well and succeed for your organization. There's also a little secret I'd like to tell you. There's many veterans who have not yet used their education benefits, such as the GI Bill. So imagine this. If you hired that person, brought them in, and pointed them in a certain direction to get an education at the expense of the government to your benefit, what a great plus that would be. Another thing we can do as HR professionals and hiring managers is to actively look for the skills that we really need to help the organization succeed. Often, veterans have them, and you might not realize it. Whether you're acting as a mentor and helping a veteran prepare for an interview, or you're in an interview and you want to make sure you understand what they did while in the military, here's some insight. The best way to find the skills that a veteran brings to your organization is to build trust in the interview process. It starts out with the simple act of thanking for the service or the support at home. Many veterans come into the interview wondering if they are starting at a disadvantage. What a great way to show that you appreciate them and get past any initial barriers. Second of all, make sure that the role is clearly understood. Yes, it is sufficient if you completely describe the role in the job posting or the job description. However, we all recognize that there may be details that your interviewee could benefit from understanding so that they can focus their answers on your specific needs. And the best way to do it, honestly, is get to those stories. Many veterans will start off with simple one-word responses because that's the culture they came from. So to ask them about a story that illustrates it can really help them bridge that gap into this world that they have not previously experienced. It also helps for you to focus the questions on the skills you need. There are likely many skills that you want, and it really helps your interviewee to focus on the ones that you need the most. Go beyond a simple interchange of question and answers and let the person know what you're looking for. Bridge the gap by sharing what you need the most and give the veteran the opportunity to bring their story to life so you understand the great things you can bring to your organization by building trust.
The way our hiring managers are that are not familiar with the military, if the resume isn't easily to translate into what they're looking for, it's an automatic no. They don't think about, and this is what I've been working with our talent acquisition specialists. If the guy on paper appears to be 80% of the way and you're kind of intrigued, let me work with him to write the resume to glean the information that you want from him to make it the right candidate, right? Our job descriptions tend to be a lot of them looking for unicorns. You know, the minimum, you need to have this and this and this and this, when we all know that veterans are so easily adaptable. Every duty station they go to, it's baptism by fire. I know in my husband's case, being a nuclear officer, here's the binder on our procedures and everything, tag you're it. And oh, by the way, we have an inspection coming up next week. You know, civilian managers don't understand mindset. And so it's hard for them to give a veteran a little bit of latitude.
Also keep in mind that during the hiring process, you have a great opportunity to really demonstrate your brand. Remember, veterans are looking for purpose and calling.
Veterans, for the 4, 5, 6, 10, 15, 20, 30 years that we've served, we've always been purpose-driven. There's always a presence of purpose. I'm a believer that that purpose is there. DoD and military service members do serve in a grand purpose. Sometimes it might be lost a little bit in the kind of the minutiae or the minor kind of efforts or things that we do sometimes. But ultimately, though, we believe that we are serving a greater purpose. And that's a big driving factor for us to continue to serve, to continue to show up to work every day with honor. Some of our challenges that we have sometimes in transition is we are lost in trying to find that purpose. Sometimes we don't always see the connection or the end game or the big picture of what the organization is trying to serve. And if we don't feel connection to that broader purpose, we will be lost, and we will then try and seek that elsewhere, whether it's walking away from the firm or the organization that brought us on board, or trying to find purpose in other avenues, other pursuits, which may end up making us less effective in the organization that we have, kind of our 9-to-5 commitment to. And so having that purpose is really important. Another big element that we have and that we enjoy and we value in the service is camaraderie. We rely on folks that have been through like challenges, like experiences, and that creates bonds. Inherently, it creates bonds. If we step into an organization that does not have a culture that values or emphasizes or develops or fosters, matures that sense of camaraderie, we'll again feel kind of lost and not feeling like we're in our place.
A common thing I hear from many veterans is that HR is a barrier to them getting hired. Let's turn it around. Let's activate our profession to be the support that helps match very skilled veterans with our organizations. During the hiring process, one very important item for you to focus on is why that veteran wants to be in your organization and do that work. That will help you understand how effective that person will be in your organization and make sure you can focus on getting the best person just like you would for any role. Another thing that can help you get the most talented veterans is sharing about the mentorship and growth opportunities that exist in your organization. One thing to keep in mind during the hiring process for our Guard and Reserve members is that they will be looking for signs of clear support for their continued service while they're employed with your organization. Remember, not only are you interviewing them, they're interviewing you. Another thing that can help you find relevant experience is to have a veteran on your interview panel. So now that you've made the great choice to hire a veteran, how do you keep them in your organization? As you're in the later phases of the hiring process and you want to make sure that you don't lose this very talented veteran that you want to hire, it's very helpful to assign a buddy, preferably somebody who's a veteran in your organization that can be that partner to help them understand the steps that you're going through and to feel that sense of connection and commitment.
So one of the things that really helped me with my success at Sandia was I was initially partnered with, at Sandia they give you a mentor and a buddy. And my buddy was a regular Sandian, had been at Sandia her whole career, and we really didn't connect. It wasn't until I found a veteran buddy that I really was able to capitalize on some of the qualities that I had that I could bring to the table that would help Sandia out. And find a veteran within your staff to buddy with them. They'll learn faster. They'll learn how to take their unique skills and abilities that they learned in the military and use them within your company in a more efficient and unique way, because they have that commonality and that purpose together, and they're able to talk the same language for a while, and it helps them get over that hump of leaving the military and being in a private sector faster because they have that connection early on. And connection helps somebody with moving towards trust within the organization, moving towards seeing how they fit in their niche in the organization, and really capitalizing upon their ability to contribute.
Whether it be the first week, the first year, or the first 10 years. There are certain things that can help you be more effective at retaining this wonderful talent that you've brought in. As I mentioned earlier, it's crucial in your interview process that you make sure you understand why the veteran wants to be in your organization and do that work. That is the biggest factor to reducing early turnover and getting you to the great benefit of veterans that they tend to stay longer in the right roles.
Career development internally, professional development internally has helped me kind of navigate from one area to the next and helping me to really understand where my value, what I can bring to the table, how I can best contribute to the mission. But they may come to your organization, applying for a very specific position. And then you as a leader, because you're doing the right things, or as a company, you're doing the right things, you're assessing their performance and saying, my goodness, like this individual can bring more to the table than what they're doing right now. Career development, mentorship, being an advocate for that individual, encouraging them through one-on-ones and saying, hey, if you want to go join, this mission group, or if you want to be this type of engineer, helping them understand what that pathway needs to look like.
With that purpose in mind, veterans can be very effective at attracting more veteran talent for your organization.
I believe that anytime we take that additional step to create pipelines, relationships, and building relationships with organizations, in this case the military, or just organizations in general, there's always what I like to call a billboard that they create for us as employers to say that is the employer of choice. That is where I believe I could create a partnership with, and we could take our people, our students, our military personnel, or just our organizational members to be a part of that organization. So through strengthening relationships and collaboration, that automatically creates just that great billboard, come work here.
For me, it's very reassuring that you want to do the right thing. And I truly hope that this has given you some tools and some resources that can help make sure that you'll succeed.
The HR people, SHRM, business owners that never served, they can serve their country by serving those who did serve and helping them become successful. And I think HR people, SHRM people, corporate heads that have not served, that always wanted to serve, that's their time then to shine and serve those that have worn the American uniform. And that's their service. I think it should be part of all that, is to honor those that have served their country with honor and dignity, sacrifice. So I think HR people should recognize that and understand that. So if they haven't served, here's an opportunity to serve those that did.